John's arms shake as he carries the final box up 3 flights of stairs, the stern woman's piercing gaze following his every move. If you've ever felt powerless, hit like and subscribe. The cardboard corners dig into his forearms as sweat beads on his forehead. John Martinez had been rushing to his second job when he spotted the elderly woman struggling with a tower of boxes outside the towering glass building. His daughter Emma's school fees were due next week, and every minute counted, but he couldn't walk past someone who needed help. "Thank you," the woman said quietly, her voice carrying an authority that seemed to cut through the busy street noise. She wore an expensive charcoal coat, her silver hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Everything about her screamed wealth and power, everything John wasn't. "No problem, ma'am," John replied, adjusting his grip on the heavy boxes. His janitorial uniform was wrinkled from his morning shift, and he hoped she wouldn't notice the small tear near his left shoulder. "Where do these need to go?" 23rd floor, she answered, studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "The elevator is broken." John's heart sank. 23 flights would make him late for his afternoon cleaning shift at the office complex across town. But the woman looked to be in her 70s, and these boxes were clearly too heavy for her to manage alone. "Let's get started," he said, forcing a smile. Each flight up became more challenging. His legs burned, his breathing grew labored, but John pushed forward. The woman climbed silently beside him, never once offering to help carry anything, just watching him with those sharp, calculating eyes. By the 15th floor, John's shirt was soaked through. His phone buzzed with a text from his supervisor asking where he was. He'd definitely be getting a warning today, maybe even fired if Mr. Peterson was in a bad mood. But he kept climbing. "You could have said no," the woman observed as they reached the 20th floor. John paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "My daughter always says you should help people when you can, even when it's hard." Something shifted in the woman's expression, a flicker of approval, perhaps. "Smart girl. How old is she?" "8. She's everything to me." John's voice caught slightly. He rarely talked about Emma with strangers, but there was something about this woman that made him feel oddly compelled to be honest. They reached the 23rd floor in silence. John set the boxes down carefully outside a set of imposing double doors marked Executive Suite. His hands were shaking from exhaustion, and he could feel a headache building behind his eyes. "I'm Mrs. Henderson," the woman said, extending her hand. "And you are?" "John Martinez." He shook her hand, noting how firm her grip was despite her aged up. Mrs. Henderson reached into her purse and pulled out what looked like a business card. "I'd like you to come to my office tomorrow morning at 9. John glanced at the card. Henderson Enterprises, he'd heard of them. One of the biggest companies in the city. "Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake." "I'm just—" "No mistake, Mr. Martinez. 9 o'clock sharp." She turned and walked through the double doors, leaving John standing alone in the hallway, holding a business card that would change his life forever. John arrived at Henderson Enterprises the next morning wearing his only decent shirt and a tie he'd borrowed from his neighbor. The lobby's marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, making him feel even more out of place. Executives in $1,000 suits brushed past him without a second glance. The receptionist directed him to the 23rd floor, the same place he'd carried those boxes yesterday. Mrs. Henderson's assistant, a professional woman in her 30s, escorted him into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Mr. Martinez," Mrs. Henderson said, rising from behind an enormous mahogany desk. "Thank you for coming. Please sit." John perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm not sure why I'm here. If this is about payment for helping you yesterday, I really don't need. It's not about payment." She folded her hands and leaned forward. "Tell me, what do you know about leadership?" The question caught him off guard. Well, I've been a single father for 6 years. I guess that requires some leadership skills." "Indeed it does. More than most people realize." Mrs. Henderson opened a file on her desk. "I've spent 40 years building this company, Mr. Martinez. I've watched countless executives climb their way up, stepping on others to reach the top. They're all the same, polished, ambitious, and utterly lacking in genuine character." John shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. Yesterday, You helped a stranger without expecting anything in return. You sacrificed your own time and energy for someone you'd never met. That's leadership, Mr. Martinez. Real leadership. Before John could respond, Mrs. Henderson stood and moved to the window. I'm 74 years old. I've been looking for my successor for 5 years, and I believe I've found him. The words hit John like a physical blow. I'm sorry, what? I'm appointing you as Chief Executive Officer of Henderson Enterprises, effective immediately. John's mouth fell open. Mrs. Henderson, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. I clean office buildings. I don't have a college degree. I've never run a company. Neither did I when I started. She turned back to him with a slight smile. But I had something most MBA graduates lack: integrity, character, the ability to put others before myself. She paused. The same qualities you demonstrated yesterday. John's head was spinning. This is impossible. Your board would never accept someone like me. The board works for me, Mr. Martinez, not the other way around. 30 minutes later, John found himself in Henderson Enterprises' main conference room, surrounded by 12 of the most intimidating people he'd ever seen. Men and women in expensive suits sat around a polished table, their faces ranging from confusion to barely concealed hostility. Mrs. Henderson stood at the head of the table. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet your new Chief Executive Officer, John Martinez. The silence that followed was deafening. A man in his 50s with silver hair and cold blue eyes leaned forward. Margaret, surely this is some kind of joke. I assure you, Richard, I'm quite serious. Mrs. Henderson's voice carried a warning edge. Richard Smith, John recognized him from company photos in the lobby, stood abruptly. This is absurd. Who is this person? What are his qualifications? His experience? Other board members began murmuring among themselves. John caught fragments of their conversations. Never heard of him. What is she thinking? This will destroy us. Mrs. Henderson raised her hand for silence. Mr. Martinez has the most important qualification of all: character. Something that seems to be in short supply in corporate America these days. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever felt underestimated because of your background? Mr. Smith's face flushed red. Character doesn't run a billion-dollar company, Margaret. This man has no business experience, no education in finance or management. This decision could ruin everything we've built. What we've built. Mrs. Henderson's voice turned ice cold. Richard, I built this company from nothing while you were still in diapers. I think I know what's best for it. John stood on shaking legs. Maybe Mr. Smith is right. Maybe I should sit down, Mr. Martinez. Mrs. Henderson's command was gentle, but firm. Richard, you've been angling for the CEO position for years. Is that what this outburst is really about? Mr. Smith's jaw clenched. My concerns are purely professional. I have 23 years of experience with this company. I've increased profits in my division by 40% over the last 5 years. I've earned this position. Earned it by what? By playing office politics? By taking credit for other people's work? Mrs. Henderson's words hit their mark. Several board members looked uncomfortable. I'll prove myself, John said quietly. All eyes turned to him. Give me a chance to show that Mrs. Henderson's faith in me isn't misplaced. If I fail, I'll step down voluntarily. Mr. Smith smiled, but there was no warmth in it. How noble. Very well, Mr. Martinez. Let's see how long you last in the real world of business. As the meeting adjourned, board members filed out in small groups, whispering among themselves. John noticed several of them stopped to shake hands with Mr. Smith, offering what looked like consoling words. Mrs. Henderson approached John as he stood alone by the conference table. That went better than expected. Better. John stared at her. They looked ready to throw me out the window. Richard Smith has been poisoning minds against any decision I make for years. Half the board thinks they should be running this company instead of me. She placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. But they'll come around once they see what you're capable of. John wasn't so sure. As he left the building that afternoon, he caught Mr. Smith in the parking garage, speaking intently with 3 other executives. They stopped talking when they saw him, but the hostile looks on their faces spoke volumes. Walking to his car, a 10-year-old sedan that looked pathetic next to the BMWs and Mercedes surrounding it, John realized he'd just made some very powerful enemies. Mrs. Henderson might have faith in him, but it was clear that not everyone shared her vision. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma's school about an upcoming parent-teacher conference. In all the chaos, he'd almost forgotten about his real life, the life where he was just a single dad trying to make ends meet. Now he was supposedly the CEO of a billion-dollar company, with a target on his back and no idea what he was doing. This was either going to be the opportunity of a lifetime or the biggest mistake he'd ever made. 48 hours later, everything collapsed. John stared at his computer screen in disbelief, reading the same email for the third time. Meridian Industries, Henderson Enterprises' biggest client, was pulling their $15 million contract, effective immediately. No, 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 he muttered, reaching for his phone to call their account manager. The line went straight to voicemail. His office door burst open without a knock. Mr. Smith strode in, followed by 3 other senior executives John barely recognized. Their expressions ranged from grim to openly hostile. Well, Mr. Smith said, settling into the chair across from John's desk without invitation. I suppose you've seen the Meridian news? Richard, what are you doing here? John tried to keep his voice steady, but panic was rising in his chest. Damage control. Something you seem incapable of handling. Mr. Smith placed a tablet on the desk and slid it toward John. Perhaps you'd like to explain how our most important client relationship deteriorated so rapidly under your leadership? John picked up the tablet and scrolled through a series of emails. His heart sank with each message. The correspondence showed a pattern of missed deadlines, ignored phone calls, and what appeared to be increasingly frustrated communications from Meridian's executive team. I never saw these emails, John said, looking up. My assistant handles my correspondence, but she never. Blaming your staff already? Mr. Smith's voice dripped with condescension. How refreshingly predictable. Margaret always said leadership meant taking responsibility. The other executives exchanged meaningful glances. John recognized the setup. He was being cornered. Look, there's obviously been some kind of mistake. Let me call Meridian's CEO directly. And, you mean James Morrison? Mr. Smith pulled out his own phone. Funny thing, he called me this morning. Seems he tried reaching you multiple times yesterday about their concerns. When you didn't respond, he assumed Henderson Enterprises was no longer interested in their business. John's mind raced. He'd been in meetings all day yesterday, preparing for a presentation to potential new investors. His assistant had given him a stack of messages, but nothing from Meridian had been marked as urgent. James and I go way back, Mr. Smith continued. Golf partners, actually. He was quite disappointed that you couldn't be bothered to return his calls. Said it showed a lack of respect for their partnership. That's not. I never received any messages about urgent calls from Morrison. Mr. Smith stood, straightening his tie. The board is meeting in 1 hour to discuss this crisis. I trust you have an explanation prepared. After they left, John frantically searched through his assistant's message logs. Every call from Meridian Industries had been marked as low priority or routine check-in. But according to the emails on Mr. Smith's tablet, Morrison had been trying to reach him about critical contract issues. The pieces were starting to fit together, but John had no way to prove what he suspected. The emergency board meeting was a massacre. John sat at the far end of the conference table, feeling like a defendant in a trial where the verdict had already been decided. Mrs. Henderson wasn't present. She was in Chicago for a medical appointment, leaving John to face the wolves alone. $15 million, board member Patricia Chin said, shaking her head. Gone because our CEO couldn't be bothered to answer his phone. It's not that simple, John began, but Mr. Smith cut him off. Actually, it is that simple. Leadership requires attention to detail, John. It requires prioritizing our most important relationships. He gestured to a folder in front of him. I have documentation showing that Morrison attempted to contact you 6 times over 2 days. 6 times. John felt sweat beading on his forehead. There's been some kind of communication breakdown. I never received any indication these calls were urgent. So now it's your assistant's fault. Another board member, Michael Torres, leaned forward. The buck stops with you, Mr. Martinez. That's what being CEO means. Mr. Smith opened his folder and began reading. Email from Morrison to our customer relations team. Dated 2 days ago. If Mr. Martinez is too busy to address our concerns personally, perhaps Henderson Enterprises has outgrown our partnership. Email 2. Yesterday morning. This level of negligence is unacceptable for a company of Henderson's supposed caliber. Each email hit John like a physical blow. The language was harsh, disappointed, and completely at odds with the relationship he thought they had with Meridian. "Gentlemen, ladies," Mr. Smith continued, "I've been with this company for over 2 decades. I've never seen a client relationship deteriorate this rapidly. This isn't just a loss of revenue. It's a reputation disaster. Word travels fast in our industry." Board members nodded grimly. John could see the writing on the wall. "What are you proposing, Richard?" Patricia Chin asked. "A vote of no confidence. John clearly isn't ready for this level of responsibility. The kind learning curve we're dealing with here could bankrupt us." "Mrs. Henderson appointed me personally," John said desperately. "Shouldn't we wait for her to return before making any major decisions?" "Margaret isn't getting any younger," Torres replied. "And with all due respect to her past contributions, this appointment was impulsive. We have a fiduciary duty to protect this company's interests." Mr. Smith smiled sympathetically. "John, no one doubts your good intentions. But good intentions don't pay salaries or keep clients happy. This job requires experience, relationships, expertise, qualities that take years to develop." "I can fix this," John insisted. "Give me a chance to contact Morrison directly to explain what happened." "You've had your chance," Patricia Chin said firmly. "The damage is done." Mr. Smith cleared his throat. "I propose we schedule a formal vote for tomorrow afternoon. That gives everyone time to consider the implications." He paused, making eye contact with each board member. The future of Henderson Enterprises hangs in the balance. As the meeting adjourned, John remained seated while board members filed out in small groups. Their conversations hushed, but clearly focused on his removal. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., his fate would be decided. He had less than 24 hours to save his career and his daughter's future. John hadn't slept all night. He sat in his office at 6 a.m., staring at a framed photo of Emma on his desk. In a few hours, the board would vote to remove him, and he'd be back to cleaning buildings. If he was lucky enough to get his old job back, the soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Lisa Chun, the IT security coordinator, peeked through his door. Unlike most employees who'd been avoiding him since news of the Meridian disaster spread, she looked genuinely concerned. "Mr. Martinez? I know this might not be the best time, but I found something you need to see." John looked up wearily. "Lisa, if this is about computer updates or software licenses, it can wait. I probably won't be here much longer anyway. It's about your email system." She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "I've been running security audits on all executive accounts since the Meridian situation. There are irregularities in your message routing." John straightened in his chair. "What kind of irregularities?" Lisa opened her laptop and set it on his desk. "Someone's been intercepting your emails. Look at this." She pointed to a complex flowchart on her screen. "These routing logs show that high-priority messages from Meridian Industries were being redirected to a secondary server before reaching your inbox." John felt his pulse quicken. "Redirected where?" "That's the interesting part. The server belongs to Mr. Smith's administrative access protocols." Lisa's fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up additional screens. "But here's the really damning evidence. Someone created automated filters that downgraded Meridian's messages from urgent to routine before they reached your assistant. Can you prove this?" "Already have." Lisa clicked to another window showing detailed server logs. "Every redirect is time-stamped and traceable. But there's more." She lowered her voice. "I found deleted emails in Mr. Smith's account, responses he sent to Meridian Industries, allegedly from you." John's hands clenched into fists. "What did they say?" Lisa pulled up the recovered emails. John's stomach dropped as he read messages sent in his name, dismissing Meridian's concerns and suggesting their contract might not be renewed. "This is fraud," John whispered. "It gets worse. I found evidence of similar sabotage targeting other deals you've been working on. The Patterson Group proposal that fell through last week? Same pattern. Someone's been systematically undermining your entire operation." John stood and began pacing. "Lisa, this is incredible work, but I need to ask, why are you helping me? Most people in this building have already written me off." Lisa closed her laptop and looked directly at him. "Because I know what it's like to be underestimated. When I started here 5 years ago, people assumed I was just another tech support girl who'd be gone within 6 months. You're the first executive who's ever bothered to learn my name or ask about my work. John paused by the window, looking out at the city skyline. For weeks, he'd been letting other people define his worth, letting Mr. Smith's condescension and the board's skepticism convince him that maybe he really didn't belong here. But standing in this office, holding evidence of a conspiracy designed to destroy him, something shifted inside his chest. He wasn't the problem. He'd never been the problem. "Lisa, can you get these files to Mrs. Henderson? She's still in Chicago, but I can send them securely." "What?" John checked his watch. "The board meeting was in 4 hours. Because I'm done running from this fight." The boardroom fell silent when John walked in carrying a manila folder and Lisa's laptop. Mrs. Henderson had returned that morning and sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Mr. Smith occupied his usual seat, looking confident and relaxed. "Before we proceed with any votes," John said, setting the laptop on the conference table, "I think the board needs to see some evidence." Mr. Smith leaned back in his chair. "John, we've already reviewed all the relevant documentation. Attempting to delay the inevitable won't." "I'm not delaying anything, Richard. I'm exposing the truth." John opened the laptop and connected it to the room's presentation screen. "Lisa Chun, our IT security coordinator, discovered some interesting patterns in our email systems." The confidence on Mr. Smith's face flickered slightly. John clicked to the first screen showing the email routing logs. "For the past month, someone has been intercepting and redirecting my communications with key clients. High-priority messages were systematically downgraded and rerouted through unauthorized servers." Board members leaned forward, studying the technical diagrams with growing interest. "This is ridiculous," Mr. Smith said, but his voice lacked its usual authority. "Technical glitches happen all the time. You can't seriously be suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Richard. I'm proving it." John clicked to the next screen, showing the deleted emails recovered from Mr. Smith's account. "These are messages sent to Meridian Industries, using my name and credentials, without my knowledge or authorization." Patricia Chun gasped as she read the dismissive, almost hostile language in the fake emails. "My God, this is deliberate sabotage. If you've ever had to fight for the truth against impossible odds, hit that like button to show your support." Mr. Smith stood abruptly. "This is clearly some kind of technical error or misunderstanding. I've never—" "Sit down, Richard." Mrs. Henderson's voice cut through the room like ice. "Let John finish." John advanced to the final screen, showing a comprehensive timeline of the sabotage campaign. Patterson Group, Meridian Industries, the Chun Corporation deal that stalled last week. Every single failure can be traced back to this same pattern of interference. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Board members who had been ready to vote for John's removal just hours earlier were now staring at Mr. Smith with a mixture of disbelief and anger. 23 years, Michael Torres said slowly. 23 years you've been with this company, Richard. How could you do this?" Mr. Smith's composure finally cracked. "You don't understand the position I was put in. I've dedicated my entire career to this company. I've earned my place here." He pointed an accusing finger at John. "This janitor walks in off the street and gets handed everything I've worked for? It's insane. So you decided to destroy him instead of proving your worth." Mrs. Henderson's words were quiet but devastating. "I was protecting the company. He's not qualified. The only person who wasn't qualified here was someone who would betray their colleagues and sabotage their own company for personal gain." Mrs. Henderson stood, her authority filling the room. "Richard Smith, you're terminated. Immediately. Security will escort you from the building." As 2 security guards appeared at the door, Mr. Smith's facade completely collapsed. "Margaret, you can't do this to me. I've given you everything. You've given me nothing but lies and manipulation. Get him out of my sight." The room remained silent for several minutes after Mr. Smith was escorted out. John stood at the presentation screen, feeling the weight of a dozen pairs of eyes on him. "Well," Patricia Chun said finally, "I think we owe Mr. Martinez an apology." Mrs. Henderson smiled for the first time in weeks. "I think we owe him much more than that." 3 weeks later, John walked through the Henderson Enterprises lobby with a confidence he'd never felt before. Employees who had once avoided eye contact now nodded respectfully as he passed. The whispered conversations had shifted from doubt to genuine admiration. His first major decision as CEO had been promoting Lisa Chun to Chief Information Security Officer. His second was implementing new protocols to prevent the kind of internal sabotage that had nearly destroyed him. The board had unanimously approved both measures. Mr. Martinez, his new assistant, called as he reached the elevator. Meridian Industries confirmed they want to renew their contract. Mr. Morrison said he was impressed by your personal call and the way you handled the situation. John smiled. The conversation with Morrison had been awkward at first, explaining how fraudulent emails had been sent in his name required delicate handling. But Morrison appreciated John's direct approach and his commitment to transparency. The renewed contract was worth $22 million, $7 million more than the original deal that I in his office. Mrs. Henderson waited with a cup of coffee and a stack of quarterly reports. At 74, she showed no signs of slowing down, but she'd begun delegating more responsibility to John each week. The Patterson Group called this morning, she reported. They want to discuss a new partnership. Apparently, word is spreading about your leadership style. What leadership style? John asked, settling behind his desk. I'm still figuring this out as I go. Mrs. Henderson chuckled. That's exactly what I mean. You don't pretend to have all the answers. You listen to people, you admit when you don't know something, and you treat everyone with respect. That's rarer than you think in corporate America. She placed a document on his desk, a formal contract amendment that would make his CEO position permanent, with a compensation package that made John's head spin. The salary alone was more than he'd made in the previous 5 years combined. Margaret, this is too much. I don't need. John, stop. She held up her hand. You've earned this. The company's stock price has increased 12% since the Smith situation was resolved. Our employee satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. You're not the same man who carried my boxes up those stairs. John thought about that for a moment. She was right. Something fundamental had changed inside him. The constant anxiety about money, about Emma's future, about whether he was good enough, had been replaced by a quiet sense of purpose. I have one request, he said finally. Name it. I want to keep my old car. Mrs. Henderson laughed, a genuine sound that filled the office. That rusty sedan in the executive parking garage. Emma loves that car. She says it has character. Then you'll keep it. But John, her expression grew serious. Don't let success change who you are. The man who helped a stranger with heavy boxes is the same man this company needs as its leader. At 3:15 p.m., John left the office to pick up Emma from school. It was something he'd started doing every day since becoming CEO, a reminder of what truly mattered. He could have hired a driver or asked Emma's babysitter to handle pickup duty, but these quiet moments with his daughter were precious. Emma bounded out of Riverside Elementary with her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. Her face lit up when she saw him waiting by the car. Daddy, guess what happened today? Tell me everything, John said, opening the passenger door for her. As they drove through the city, Emma chattered about her math test, her friend Jessica's birthday party, and her science project on volcanoes. John listened to every word, marveling at how her problems, so immediate and important to her 8-year-old world, put everything in perspective. Daddy, Emma said as they stopped at a red light. Are you happy now? The question caught him off guard. What do you mean, sweetheart? You used to look tired all the time. Worried. Now you smile more. She paused, considering her words carefully. Mrs. Peterson at school says her daddy got a new job and now their family doesn't have to worry about money anymore. Is that what happened to us? John reached over and squeezed her hand. Something like that. But you know what the best part is? What? I get to pick you up from school every day now. That's worth more than any job. Emma grinned. Even more than being the boss of that big building. Especially more than that. They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, Emma humming softly while she worked on homework in the passenger seat. John thought about the journey that had brought them here, from struggling to pay bills to running a billion-dollar company. The transformation seemed impossible, but it had started with one simple act of kindness. As they pulled into their driveway, John realized that Mrs. Henderson had been wrong about one thing. He was exactly the same man who had carried those boxes up 23 flights of stairs. The difference was that now he understood his own worth. Sometimes the most extraordinary opportunities come from the most ordinary moments of human decency. If this story inspired you to believe in the power of integrity and kindness, join our community. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss stories that prove character always wins in the end.